She showed up with a pin, not a bouquet, not a welcome gift, a pin, gold-plated, monogrammed, and already uncapped, like the ink wouldn't dare dry before she got what she came for. Linda, my future mother-in-law, was standing in our kitchen, smiling like she owned the place. And technically, that was the problem. She'd accidentally brought the deed paperwork to our new home, the home I paid for, the one her son and I picked together, signed for together, furnished together. But there she was, flipping to the last page and casually sliding it across the table, like she was helping us with a pizza delivery form. Except this one had her name listed under co-owner. I didn't speak right away. I just looked at her. Then at my fiancée, Jenna. Her mouth opened, then shut. She didn't know. That much was clear. But Linda? She knew exactly what she was doing. I figured it'd just be easier this way, she said. For the family. The family. That's what she always said, as if family was a reason to break boundaries, not build trust. As if biology granted her access to rooms she'd never been invited into. I cleared my throat. Calm. Even. The kind of calm that makes people nervous. Linda, I said, this house isn't Jenna's in my name. Yours was never on the table. She blinked, then gave that laugh, the one that always felt like it came from a stage instead of her chest. Oh, sweetie, you don't understand how these things work. When you marry into a family, everything becomes shared. What's hers is yours, and what's yours is ours. There it was. The ours. The slip that said the quiet part out loud. And maybe if this had been the first time, I would have brushed it off. But it wasn't. There was the time she tried to rearrange our bedroom while we were out, said the headboard faced the wrong direction for energy flow. The way she introduced me at parties as Jenna's current partner, like I was a temp worker she was just tolerating. And, of course, the conversation 2 weeks before where she pulled me aside and said, point blank, you know you'll never be real family, right? That part stung. Because I'd spent my whole life trying to build a real family. One that didn't depend on bloodlines, but on loyalty, honesty, love. So I smiled, slowly, genuinely, and said, Linda, would you like to see something? She hesitated. That smile of hers twitched just a bit. I stood, walked to the safe in our hallway, and pulled out a folder. Not a thick one, just a single document. I laid it flat on the table in front of her. Her eyes scanned it. Her mouth went tight. It was the prenup. The one Jenna had insisted on signing when we bought the house together. The one that clearly, in black and white, stated that in the event of divorce, inheritance, or external financial interference, our assets would remain separate unless mutually amended in writing. Linda didn't speak, so I did. Jenna asked for this, I said. Not me. She wanted us to be clean, clear, untouchable, because she knew how messy family could get. I looked at Jenna then. She looked back and nodded. It was small, but firm. Linda picked up her purse, snapped it shut louder than necessary. I was just trying to help, she said. I know, I said. But sometimes helping looks a lot like holding a pen you were never asked to use. She left without another word. And for the first time in months, the house felt like it belonged to us again. But that was just the beginning. Because what I didn't know, what I couldn't have guessed, was that Linda hadn't just tried to sneak her name onto our deed. She tried something else. Something uglier. Something Jenna would only confess weeks later, with tears in her eyes and an envelope in her hand. And when I found out, let's just say the prenup wasn't the only line I'd drawn. This was a war of boundaries. And I'd only just started building the walls. 3 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. No uninvited visits from Linda. The quiet felt suspicious. Not peaceful. Not resolved. Just the kind of quiet that shows up after someone loses a round they thought they were born to win. I should have known it wasn't over, but I wanted to believe we'd hit a turning point. That maybe, just maybe, the prenup had been a wake-up call. A legal brick wall she couldn't sweet-talk her way through. I was wrong. It happened on a Thursday. Jenna came home from work early, face pale, hands shaking, one of those thick manila envelopes clutched to her chest like it might either explode or dissolve. She sat down across from me without saying a word. Jenna, I asked. She didn't answer. Just opened the envelope, pulled out a stack of papers, and laid them between us. It was a trust agreement, drafted 6 months ago, and it had her signature, except she didn't remember signing it, at least, not like this. She said it was a basic form, Jenna whispered, just something simple about inheritance. No notary, no lawyer. She printed it at home and said we'd handle the rest later. I was running late that day, and I nodded slowly. You trusted her, I finished. She did. Too much. Linda had framed it as early planning for Jenna's future, called it a harmless precaution. Jenna, wanting to avoid conflict and still hoping to please her mother, signed without reading closely. But it wasn't harmless. The document named Linda as a partial trustee over any jointly owned property, with limited authority in case of divorce or incapacitation. But it wasn't about inheritance. Not really. The document assigned Linda as a partial trustee for a future property-based asset, with limited decision-making power in case of marital dissolution or incapacitation. In plain English, if Jenna and I ever split, Linda would be in the room when decisions were made about our house. Our house. The one I poured every cent I had into. The one I renovated after work, weekend after weekend, with splinters in my hands and paint on my face. The one I thought we were building a life in together. I leaned back in my chair and just stared at her. At Jenna. Because here's the part one haven't told you yet. I didn't come from much. I built my life piece by piece, careful and slow. Every dollar earned, every risk calculated. When I met Jenna, I was already carrying that cautious kind of love, the kind that comes from growing up with people who leave. But she made me believe, made me want permanence. Which is why this betrayal, even if it started as a mistake, cut deep. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, voice low. She shook her head, eyes wet. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know what it was. She said it was for you. I finished. But it gave her control over us. Jenna nodded. Small. Hollow. I stood up, walked to the window. The late afternoon sun hit the glass just right, lit the living room in gold, soft and glowing. It was the kind of light that makes you think anything broken could be repaired. But I didn't feel reparable. I felt invaded. Used. Not by Jenna, not exactly. But by the part of her that still couldn't say no to her mother. The part that feared conflict more than consequence. And that was a crack in our foundation I hadn't seen before. I'll fix it, she whispered behind me. I'll revoke it. File a termination notice. I'll go to the lawyer myself. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I was too busy remembering the look in Linda's eyes the day she said I'd never be real family. She wasn't warning me. She was daring me to think I could outmaneuver her in a game she'd been playing her entire life. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about the deed. This was about control. About legacy. About her seeing her daughter's life as an extension of her own power. She didn't lose when I showed her the prenup. She just changed tactics. Jenna came up behind me, rested her hand on my back. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. I looked at her. And this time, I didn't just see my fiancée. I saw a woman standing at the center of a tug-of-war. One side tied to blood, guilt, and generational strings. The other side tied to me. And she'd have to choose. Because no one gets to build a life while dragging someone else's blueprint behind them. I know, I said. But Jenna, this can't happen again. Not with your mom. Not with anyone. She nodded. But nods are easy. The next few weeks would prove if her spine was strong enough to match. And they did, just not in the way I expected. Because Linda wasn't done. She had one last move to play. And it came with a wine glass, a rehearsal dinner toast, and a lie so sharp it almost ruined everything. Rehearsal dinner. If you've ever been through one, you know the vibe: dim lights, folded napkins, too many almost toasts, and enough emotional landmines to keep a therapist employed for years. Everyone's smiling a little too wide, laughing a little too loud, acting like we're already nostalgic for a wedding that hasn't even happened yet. And that night, it was Jenna's turn to glow. She looked beautiful, confident again. She'd filed the revocation paperwork a week before, showed me the signed and notarized copy, told her mom directly, in person, no buffer, that there would be no more legal surprises. I was proud of her, proud and hopeful. I should have known it was too quiet. Dinner went off without a hitch, until the toast started. First it was my brother, then Jenna's best friend, then my uncle, who told a long-winded story about our family reunion and managed to cry halfway through it. And then Linda stood. She didn't raise a glass. She raised her voice. I just want to say, she began, how proud I am of Jenna, and how grateful I am that she found someone like Eric. That part sounded fine, but the tone? Too sweet, like syrup hiding vinegar underneath. I know, she continued, that our family can be overwhelming, but we've always looked out for our own. That got a chuckle or two. Then she turned to me. And Eric, thank you for never making Jenna choose. That kind of restraint is rare these days. That was the dagger, smooth, almost complimentary, but twisted at the end. The room didn't clap. It didn't laugh. It shifted uncomfortably. I also want to thank you, Linda said, for being so understanding about the trust we set up. I know some men wouldn't have taken that so well. I froze. The room went quiet. The trust? The trust we just dissolved? Jenna's knuckles turned white around her wine glass. Linda pressed on. You're showing everyone what real commitment looks like, accepting every part of the person you're marrying, even the parts that come with family ties. The room didn't clap. It didn't laugh. It held its breath. I stood up. Not fast. Not loud. Just steady. And I said one thing. Linda, that trust was revoked. By Jenna. Of her own choice. You know that. She blinked. Just once. That rehearsed smile didn't move. Well, she said, things change so fast, I can hardly keep up. I turned to the room. For clarity, I said, no part of our marriage or our property is co-owned or co-managed by anyone except us. And we prefer to keep it that way. A few people chuckled. Awkwardly. But the message landed. Jenna was staring at her mother now. Face unreadable. Linda finally sat down. She didn't say another word the rest of the night. But I knew why she did it. That toast? It wasn't for me. It wasn't even for Jenna. It was for control. A last swing at the narrative. One more chance to look like the magnanimous matriarch, misunderstood, generous, somehow always in the right even when caught in the act. But this time, the cracks showed. Jenna didn't come to bed that night. She stayed on the balcony of our hotel room, wrapped in a blanket, eyes on the skyline. I joined her around midnight, sat beside her without saying anything. After a while, she spoke. She's never going to stop, is she? I didn't lie. No, I said. She won't. Jenna nodded. Slow. Then looked at me. Then I have to. She didn't mean she was giving up. She meant she was choosing. Choosing where her loyalty landed. Who her life belonged to from here on out. And when she reached for my hand, she didn't say anything poetic. She just squeezed it tight. Like someone digging in for a long fight, not out of spite, but out of love. The wedding was still a week away. But the war had already been decided. Linda had made her last play. Now it was time for Jenna to make hers. And I had no idea what that meant. Not until the morning of the ceremony. When Linda tried one last stunt. One that made the prenup look like child's play. One that nearly ended the wedding before I even made it to the altar. The morning of our wedding started calm. Too calm. No misplaced cufflinks. No thunderstorm ruining the outdoor setup. No cold feet. No missing vows. No champagne-related disasters. Just quiet. And if you followed this story so far, you know what that means. The storm was still coming. I was getting dressed when my best man, David, knocked on the dressing room door. He was pale, sweating, even. And I knew from his face, it wasn't nerves. It wasn't weather. It was her. Eric, he said, we've got a problem. I didn't even need to ask who. She's in the bridal suite, he said. She showed up saying she needed a quick word alone with Jenna before the ceremony. Said it was urgent. Personal. I frowned. And someone let her in? He nodded. The coordinator said it sounded like a last-minute mother-daughter moment. She wasn't alone. I felt it coming. She brought someone? I asked. David handed me his phone. Jenna just texted. Said her mom showed up with a family friend. Turns out he's a lawyer. And they brought legal documents. My chest went tight. David added, and Jenna's not letting you see her yet. Said she wants to handle it. I sat down. Not because I was tired, but because I could feel it. The old dread crawling up my spine. The kind that says, you're not being paranoid. This really is happening again. I stood back up. Started pacing. What kind of documents? David hesitated. She didn't say exactly. Just that it's something about the venue. About who's financially responsible if it gets called off. That stopped me. Hard. Because Linda wasn't paying for anything. She had insisted early on. No need. My dears, you're grown. You've got it handled. She hadn't contributed a cent. But apparently, she still had an angle. And I didn't understand it until later, when Jenna finally came down the aisle, 15 minutes late, veil slightly crooked, eyes red, but jaw set like stone. We said our vows. We kissed. But I knew something happened in that room. Something she hadn't told me yet. I didn't ask during the photos, or the cake cutting, or even during our first dance. I waited. Because some things, when they break, leave powder on your hands. And I could tell Jenna was still dusting herself off. It wasn't until we were alone, back in the hotel suite, dress unzipped, jacket hung, heels kicked off in the corner, that she told me. She tried to file a claim, she said, voice low. Said the venue was booked using her name. I frowned. It wasn't. She nodded. I know. But she claimed she helped secure it through a family connection, said the agreement fell under her name. That if the wedding didn't go through, she'd be responsible for the cancellation. Which meant, she had a right to step in. I stared at her. She was trying to force your hand? Jenna nodded again. Said she didn't trust you. Said you were pushing me into this. that I was giving up my freedom. I sat down. Hard. She told the coordinator that if I didn't want to go through with the ceremony, she could pause it. Legally. Just until I felt safe again. I looked up. And the lawyer? Some family friend. Not even her real attorney. It was posturing. Smoke and mirrors. But Eric. She paused, voice catching. She tried to crash my wedding with legal leverage. She exhaled shakily. Once I told her to leave, the coordinator called security. They didn't have to drag her out, but they made it clear she wasn't welcome in that room again. She looked at me. I shut the door myself. I didn't speak for a while. Because when the betrayal hits that deep, it's not about the stunt. It's about the willingness to weaponize love, family, moments that were supposed to be sacred. She left when I told her something, Jenna said. One sentence. I looked at her. What was it? She met my eyes. I told her, "You're not invited into my marriage." There was silence. Not cold. Not awkward. Just the kind of silence that follows truth. And in that moment, I realized something. Linda had spent years trying to keep control by keeping us off balance. She poked holes in boundaries and called it love. She wrapped manipulation in tradition. She planted fear, then offered herself as the cure. But Jenna? She finally stopped treating the infection with kindness and chose amputation instead. It hurt, but it saved us. The rest of that night was ours. And for once, finally, Linda didn't find a way in. But her absence? It wasn't quiet. It was the kind that left echoes. Because 2 weeks later, we got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. And inside it was a photo. A photo of Jenna. Age 6. Smiling, gap-toothed, sitting in front of a house I'd never seen before. With a man she swore she didn't remember. And on the back, in cursive, "Do you know who your real family is?" The past wasn't finished with us yet. Linda was done. But someone else? Someone worse? They just started playing. The photo sat on our coffee table like it might detonate. I didn't touch it. Jenna didn't either. We just stared at it. Her 6 years old, hair in pigtails, cheeks flushed from sun or laughter, or both. And next to her, a man. Mid-30s, maybe. Arm around her. Faint smile. Eyes like hers. She didn't recognize him. At least, that's what she said at first. But something about her went still when she looked at the picture. Not confusion. Not panic. Just still. "What house is that?" I asked gently. She shook her head. "I don't know." We turned the photo over again. That handwriting. Not Linda's. Too neat. Too careful. Like someone had practiced it. "Do you know who your real family is?" A threat? A riddle? Or something worse? "I think it's from him," Jenna said finally. "Who?" She looked at me, then down at the photo. "My biological father." My heart thudded. "I thought Linda raised you alone," I said. "She did. Mostly. She told me he left when I was 5. Never came back. Said he wasn't stable. That he drank too much. That I was better off." She was trembling now. Just slightly, like her body was catching up to the truth before her brain could explain it. "I always believed her," she said. Never asked questions. I thought she was protecting me. I reached out, covered her hand with mine. "But this," she said, nodding toward the photo. "That's not a man who's gone. That's someone who's been watching." The envelope had no return address. No note. Just that picture. No postmark. Which meant it had been dropped off by hand. Which meant someone came to our house. I felt it then, the skin prickle of something uninvited, reaching past the walls we built. I checked the locks that night. All of them. Installed a camera the next day. But that didn't stop the next delivery. It came 4 days later. A second envelope. Same handwriting. Inside was a newspaper clipping dated 16 years ago. A car crash. 2 adults. 1 child survived. The child's name? Jenna Marie Walker. Her maiden name. The adults? Unidentified. I showed it to her. She went pale. "That's not right," she said. "My dad didn't die in a car crash. He left." That's what she told me. That's what's always been it. She stopped, shook her head, backed away from the table. What if she lied? I asked gently. Her eyes darted to mine. Why would she do that? And we both knew the answer before I said it out loud. Because Linda never wanted to share you. Not with him. Not with anyone. This wasn't just control. It was erasure. Linda hadn't just tried to own our wedding or wedge herself into our marriage. She tried to rewrite Jenna's origin story. And someone out there, someone with photos, clippings, and access, was writing it back. I started digging, pulled public records, searched archived obituaries, found old property records linked to the address in the photo, a place 2 counties over, deeded to a Caleb Nash. That name hit Jenna like a slap. I've heard that name, she said. Once. When I was a teenager. My mom was arguing with my aunt on the phone. Said something like, if Caleb ever tries to reach out again, I'll have him served. I looked up. So he did try. She nodded slowly. But she told me he disappeared. Disappeared. That word again. Just like Linda had tried to do with him, make him vanish. Erase the man who helped make Jenna. But now, he was resurfacing. In photos. In warnings. In our mailbox. I wasn't sure what he wanted. To reconnect? To reclaim? To warn her? But something told me he wasn't the threat. The threat was the silence. The silence Linda wrapped around her daughter like a weighted blanket for 28 years. We sat in bed that night, side by side, not touching. Just thinking. Letting the weight of it all settle. Do you want to find him? I asked. Jenna didn't answer at first. Then, softly, I want to know who I am. The whole truth. Not just her version of it. I nodded. Then we find him. Together. It felt like the right thing to say. But the truth? I wasn't prepared for what we'd find. Because when we found Caleb Nash, he wasn't alone. And the first words out of his mouth changed everything. We found him in a trailer outside Lark County. Barely on the map. A dirt road. One porch light. A wind chime made from old keys. He opened the door before we knocked. Like he'd been waiting. His hair was gray at the edges. His shirt tucked in too carefully. But the moment Jenna stepped forward, something in his posture collapsed. Like his body recognized her before his mind could catch up. He didn't cry. Didn't reach for her. Just said, you look just like your mother. And Jenna? She didn't flinch. She just asked one question. Why did you leave? He didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he stepped aside. Let us in. The place was small, clean, lived in. A photo of a dog on the fridge. A stack of newspapers by the door. He motioned for us to sit. Then he told the truth. He said Linda had threatened him. Said if he came near Jenna again, she'd make sure the courts knew about the arrest. The one from his 20s, a bar fight, no charges, but enough to muddy his name. Said she'd file for full custody. Take Jenna out of state. Disappear. She told me, he said quietly, that Jenna would grow up hating me if I tried to stay. That she'd make sure of it. Jenna sat there, hands in her lap, shaking just a little. Not with rage. Not with fear. With realization. She said you were unstable, she whispered. She said you gave up. He looked at her. And I swear to you, it was like watching a man swallow every year he'd missed in one breath. I never stopped writing, he said. She sent them back. Every card. Every birthday note. Said they were unopened. Told me to take the hint. He stood, walked to a filing cabinet, opened it, pulled out a box. Inside were letters. Dozens. All addressed to Jenna. None opened. He handed them to her like something holy. She made me a ghost, he said. But I never left. And then came the last piece. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a photo, the same one we'd gotten in the mail. I sent this, he said. A few weeks ago. After she called me. Jenna blinked. So it was you? He nodded. I didn't want to scare you. I didn't even know if you'd open it. But when she said you were slipping away from her, I knew she'd try something. I wanted you to see something real before she rewrote it again. He looked down, then back up at her. She didn't just keep you from me, he said. She told everyone I was dead, your grandparents, our friends. No one ever told me where you moved. Jenna stared at the photo, then whispered, why now? Why send this now? Caleb took a breath. Because she called me. I froze. She called you. He nodded. A month ago. Out of nowhere. Said she was losing you. That you were slipping away. And if I ever wanted a chance to tell you my side, this was it. Jenna's brow furrowed. But why would she do that? After all these years? Caleb looked at her with something between pity and anger. Because she wanted to control the truth, even as it came out. She knew she couldn't hide me forever. So she chose the timing, the method, the framing. If I was going to reappear, she wanted it to be her idea, her version, on her terms. I exhaled slowly. She wasn't handing you your father, I said. She was trying to remind you who gave him back. That was it. Her final move. Linda hadn't sent the photo to scare us. She sent it because she was losing the war, and she knew the only way to keep control was to remind Jenna of the missing chapter, to make herself the gatekeeper of truth again. Except this time, she underestimated what Jenna would do with the truth once she had it. We left the trailer in silence. No fights. No closure speech. Just the weight of clarity. In the car, Jenna finally exhaled. I feel like I just met myself, she said. And I don't know if I should be angry or relieved. I looked at her, took her hand. You don't have to choose. And in that moment, something shifted. This wasn't about Linda anymore. This wasn't about me proving I belonged. This was about us, building something with no strings, no secrets, no pen waiting to sign something behind our backs. We drove home that night, not to a wedding suite or a perfect ending, but to something better, truth. And with truth, peace. Linda tried to reach out a few weeks later. A letter. No apology. Just a list of misunderstandings and a hope we could return to normal. Jenna didn't reply. She folded the letter, tucked it in a drawer, and never opened it again. Sometimes, closure doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence. Not the cold kind. The kind that means, we're done here. That house we fought for? I was getting dressed when my best man, David, knocked on the dressing room door. He was pale, sweating, even. And I knew from his face, it wasn't nerves. It wasn't weather. It was her. Eric, he said, we've got a problem. I didn't even need to ask who. She's in the bridal suite, he said. With a lawyer. I blinked. Eh, what? He handed me his phone. Jenna just texted me. Said her mom showed up uninvited, wouldn't leave, and brought legal documents. It's home now. Not because of what we put into it, but because of what we kept out. No more ghosts. No more gatekeepers. Just us. Jenna even built a shelf in the hallway for the letters Caleb wrote. Not all of them are opened. Not yet. But they're there. Waiting. Quiet. Like her real story. No longer hidden. No longer hers alone. And me? She calls me family now. Not because a ring made it so, but because when the walls shook, I stayed. And that? That's real. That's earned. That's forever.